I love that woman's voice. Awesome. She always lets me know that it's recording. What I want to say before we start, most people are not new. Thank you for coming out. Gosh, it's amazing. At one point in the story, I'm going to talk about like 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 feet of snow basting the walls. And we're living that here. It's awesome. I want to say above all, we can do a round of applause later and stuff. Really, God bless you, Nicole. Nicole's awesome. She's great always. Yeah. Really. I think with like all sincerity, Nicole, like in, behind the scenes and in front of the scenes and everything is kind of a point man at Augustine's, definitely made this night possible, because with the pipes being frozen, whatever, it's kind of her ingenuity piecing this together. So thank you very much, Nicole. And I want to thank Erin Kasprowicz, who I'm going to call up soon to do her wonderful introduction. People that have done this in the past, people that have attended these over the years, Carbon Eggleston and Cecily Perel, now Cecily Kresslins, did a wonderful job. And I'm so glad. It sounds hilarious to be like, oh, in the annals of hippo lectures, if it's like, 75-year thing, but like to have the third presenter also be awesome. It's great. Maybe we are building kind of a thing. So I'm very appreciative to Erin as well, who will kind of give the information about this story. I don't want to speak for her. She will introduce it. I simply want to say that what excites me a lot about this is, as Father talked about, I've talked about, the Hippo Lectures book is out, that is a compilation of all this kind of stuff. This story was a Hippo lecture, but it was not in the Hippo Lectures book. And the reason for that, and the reason that I've selected it again to talk about it now, it's an excerpt from this forthcoming novel that has been forthcoming for a long, long time. A lot of you know that have been here. That novel's been signed and supposedly coming out for years now. The Hippo Lectures got signed within that process and is out before. It's still being designed. But when it comes out, I'll be so excited to share it with you. It's 1,000 pages long. It's huge. This story is from the middle of that. There's a chapter in that book called Chernobyl on the Palouse, and it's set in the year 2100. And I'll say nothing more. Erin will, introduce more of the kind of whatever details and stuff. When I come back, I'll just start. So if you want to welcome Erin to the stand.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so the feeling that you get when you're watching a movie and you see a place that you've been to before, and you suddenly realize with excitement that that's the exact spot that you've been to multiple times, or that exact spot is where the story is taking place. I want you to prepare to experience that feeling over and over again tonight as Dr. Gracjan presents his first ever repeated Hippo lecture, as he said. This is a tale that takes place right in our very own backyard in Moscow and in Pullman. This story is titled Chernobyl on the Palouse, as he said, and this is apparently Dr. Gracjan's favorite Hippo lecture ever. So, and as he said, it can also be found in the novel that will be recently published. So, without further ado, Dr. Gracjan.
It's unsurprising Stephanie Dupasquier never came here. KTO, Télévision Catholique Francophone, rarely covers American angles. Beloved by the French faithful and fallen away alike, it is also unsurprising that Madame Dupasquier became a household name to American Catholics. Even here on the Palouse, a small patch of pristine soil and sky in an overlooked corner of the Pacific Northwest. Pat's grandmother loved Stephanie Dupasquier, even wrote her a letter inviting her to film an episode of the show Église du Monde in Pullman. It didn't work out. But Madame Dupasquier sent her a very nice personal response along with a signed picture of herself. Pat saw the framed photo so many times in his grandmother's house as a boy that Stephanie Dupasquier eventually became more family than real family. Decidedly more recognizable than some distant aunt or third cousin removed from whoever. Those people lived hundreds of miles away. Stephanie Dupasquier lived in his grandmother's kitchen. You can reach said kitchen via the Moscow-Pullman Highway, comprised of ID 8 and WA 270. All the rolling slopes of wheat and lentils, even they can't be contaminated by the occasional side of the road salvage shops, airing all their dirty laundry, in the form of broken down and well-rusted carburetors, defenestrated car doors, thin and thick split windshields, and so many tires everywhere, being enveloped by broken glass and burnt glass, begging to be further smashed down into nothing, pressed and squished tightly against chain link fencing, the very links in the chain links, daring drivers by to guess, go ahead and guess, which one is the weak link, and could at any moment spill its contents onto this carefully paved, scenic, winding road. WA 270 goes right into the heart of downtown Pullman, which consists exclusively of one-way street. Main Street is a glorious street, especially in late fall when the city drapes lights over the trees that line its trace in between the high hills that ring the town. The road is set low over the trees, like the Colorado River carving out the Grand Canyon, while here in Pullman, one can take Main Street out to Grand Ave and circle the town and its hills time and again in an experience comparable to joyriding the Viennese Ringstrasse under a Nacht-summer twilight sky. Quite a few buildings on Main Street solely stand to demarcate the not coffee shops from the coffee shops. One of these is a restaurant named Black Cypress. Food's good, but who cares compared to the legend of Lars Michelson? Michelson worked at Black Cypress many years ago. He was good at his job, bartending and half helping to manage the joint, and he liked it enough to start adding skills both of the intrinsically artistic and financially beneficial sort. He became a master sommelier and, liking the golden froth no less than the pressed grapes, a master cicerone in short order afterwards. Michelson's rare beer wine expertise drew the attention of a few big-time restaurants across North America. A Michelin 3-star hole in the wall in Montreal apparently offered him a couple $100,000 annually to pair their foie gras poutine with alcoholic beverages of every imaginative genre. There, that place, that restaurant, that place in Montreal. Yeah, Montreal, Quebec. Yeah, Quebec is in one of 13 provinces. What? Yeah, of course, yes, Canada. What were you thinking? What? Oh, no. No, what the? Are you serious? No, Canada, Montreal, Canada. Lars turned down the job. This act of either professional insanity or impregnable loyalty to Pullman won him innumerable respect on the Palouse. Then he started deadlifting, Bulgarian method. At the outset, he struggled with more than 2 plates on each side of the bar. Soon he was easing past 3 and 4 on his way to 5, plus a little 2.5er, as tastily scrumptious as the creme brulee he was mastering in the back of the Black Cypress kitchen to make a not half bad 500-pound deadlift. When food critics started flocking to Pullman to try the now exposed dual master sommelier cicerone's adroit creme brulee confectionery talents, Lars was getting fired up with a 3-level motivational process, beginning with smelling salts, ending with screaming as loud as he could right before making his attempt, transitionally connected by a friend insulting him in rapid-fire staccato patois before successfully completing deadlifts in the 900 to 1,000-pound register. Then he became the manager at Black Cypress. Then he started modeling. Turns out he was pretty good looking. Turns out more than a few magazines liked sending their photographers to photograph him wearing different styles of clothing and then publishing these photographs taken by their photographers in their magazines full of brimming with, well, photographs. But this was all still pretty local. Lars had made a name solely on the limited Seattle-Portland notoriety corridor. Then the head of a Manhattan modeling agency posed the question, how about becoming the face of something ending in where? He asked Lars one night at Black Cypress, struggling to speak while scarf shuffling down the indisputable creme de la creme of the Pacific Northwest food scene. Winter, formal, swim. How about it? Look, you're a style soldier. I'm drafting you into the great fashion war. But by the way, can I get a second helping of creme brulee, please? Lars got him that second helping, all the while dancing in perfect rhythm to Margot Avril's Drifting French 79 remix. A young woman in Black Cypress was so debilitatingly smitten by his perfect body control that she went right up to him and blurted out, drifting from you. No, I want to drift into you forever. Now, this girl was absolutely, by every measure, objectively speaking, certainly without a doubt, it can be said without hesitation, without a second thought, reflexively, drop dead, pop up alive, sideways on highways and byways, and everywhere, I's going to Louisiana, banjos, 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 violins, and bluegrass fiddles, sun so hot I froze to death, gorgeous. Sorry, Lars said, already spoken for. The girl, a famous local vlogger, was devastated. 1,000 hearts broke simultaneously when she informed her internet audience that the most eligible man in Pullman was not eligible at all. Cool side note, though, she and Lars had a long, all night into the early morning hours conversation on what was Margot Avril's best song. More Pullman loyalty. Lars said no to the NYC modeling gig, and the people could hardly handle it. In gratitude, the mayor of Pullman enacted an ordinance requiring every 10th boy born in the Pullman city limits to be named Lars, and every 100th girl to be given the name Michaela. Today, in Ben and Pat's chronological present, there are more Larses and Michaelas in Pullman, Moscow, and Colfax, Washington than anywhere else on earth. Then Lars started painting. Then he started speaking Japanese, Swahili, Russian, and Persian. Then he started dunking. Would play pickup basketball just to dunk on people. He was really good at dunking on people and kind of like enforcing in clear terms, like his, like his, like his, well, the, well, like his, like his, like, well, you know, like his, physical superiority. Then he started scuba diving. His brother, Antonius, found a pearl that sold at auction for $44 million. Then Lars got a PhD in comparative literature. Then he wrote a novel. Then, unexpectedly, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Then he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, finishing third. Then, yes, finally, he went into coffee. Right before disappearing for public view for the next 50 years, he went into coffee, and with predictable results, his coffee shop gained the reputation of being the best in town. The only possible challenger to Lars Michelson as the most recognizable thing to ever come out of Pullman is the etymologically abhorrent, lexicographically disastrous contribution to American speech via the slang terms goaf, shof, and the consequential phrases gofen on shofs and shofen on goafs. All this originated from a few WSU frat boys on a football Saturday in the late 2030s when the Minnesota Golden Gophers paid a visit to Martin Stadium. The flexibility of goaf is practically limitless. It can be used to say a woman is very good looking or quite unattractive. For example, dude, Susanna is so freaking goaf, it's insane. Or, I don't know, man, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I don't want to be mean, but she's kind of goaf. That something is very hot or very cold, tall or short, slim or fat, fast or slow. It's used in between other words as a prefix and suffix, even as a singular expressive that can mean multiple things depending upon context. Ungoafable, for example, can mean unbelievable, unflappable, implacable, unbreakable, and unsolvable. Used to highlight grandiose and irreversible missteps, shofen on goafs and gofen on shofs usually bespeaks utter domination of an opponent. Your team beat their rival 56-0. They were shofen on goafs all day. The most beautiful girl in the school turned everyone down to go to prom with you. You just goafed every shof. The Moscow Pullman Highway is so pretty. It tolerates neither goafs nor shofs. But to shof goafs in the passing lane is a proposition decidedly goaf from the get-go, thanks to legislative shofs who implemented a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. Right off the Moscow Pullman Highway, heading east towards Idaho's the U of I Vandals football stadium, the Kibbie Dome. A barrel-arched roof, laminated wood placed onto a steel skeleton, it sits above the playing field. One bookended by matching, unsupported concrete walls, vandals in cursive script, stenciled on in rather large font above the goalposts. Halfway up those back of the end zone walls, the concrete gives way to massive, translucent window panels that continue the rest of the way up to the dome's roof. On sunny days, when the light streams through in full blast, one would be forgiven for thinking this is the most beautiful place to watch anything on Earth. Ben thinks the Kibbie Dome looks like the contamination dome placed over Reactor 4 in Chernobyl, following the famous nuclear disaster of 1986. Ever since bright light, Chernobyl's fame or infamy has only increased. Mikhail Gorbachev did say, after all, that he viewed it as the prime reason for the USSR's dissolution and collapse, that it became impossible to keep all the lies going, onward, carefully stitched together, the sticky webs of falsehood, when radioactive clouds were detected over Scandinavia. Some of the French Catholic kids at Moscow High have an after-school club called Rosaries for Chernobyl. Ben, being neither Catholic nor French, Ben doesn't really understand what it's all about. He does remember a friend, a member of this club, Alexander, going on for quite a long time to him, a Mormon, and Pat, a catch-all, low-heat cream reduction sauce Protestant, about very specific Catholic concepts like redemptive suffering, and then about an assorted smattering of supposed miracles in the wake of the Chernobyl disaster. He talked about a KTO special report Stephanie Dupasquier had done many years ago, reporting from St. Elijah's Orthodox Church, a medieval mini cathedral in the Byzantine style, with fluorescent accents of sea green on the main door, and the arches at the front of the door, arches led downward by purple columns affixed to a blue-colored portico. She commenting on the icon within the church, the Savior of Chernobyl, Christ, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and St. Michael the Archangel above a nighttime scene. White-robed saints on the left and the power plant workers on the right, while in the immediate foreground, a reputed miraculous misshapen pine tree, in its bent form looking like both a cross and the first letter of the Ukrainian name for that fateful place that a plant worker claimed diverted radiation from residential areas, and in doing so, in splitting and redirecting an approaching deadly monster, made many ironclad non-believers, his power plant colleagues, consider the idea of God for the first time in their life. In the background of the Savior of Chernobyl icon, behind the pine tree, is the nuclear power plant itself, small and lonely, looking harmless there, way off in the distance. By anyone else affected, Alexander meant those workers and first responders, those conscripted miners, graphite roof shovelers, cleanup crew, the liquidators, anyone who then or soon after or later on contracted the worst type of radiation poisoning, suffering veritable martyrdoms in their dying agonies, their veins splitting apart inside, not fit for even the administration of pain-killing morphine, and so left with nothing but to drink of a chalice that would not pass from them. But not those three brave men who volunteered to swim under the melting reactor to drain tanks so as to prevent a secondary explosion that could have permanently contaminated the region for centuries to come. The common sense balance of their actions, being here equals certain death, calling to mind Father Hubert Schiffer and the German Jesuits in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. All this is precisely why, Alexander said, jokes about Lincoln's assassination, for example, are not just tasteless, but morally wrong. Because there's no such thing as, quote, enough time passed. Because time means nothing against the backdrop of eternity, for whether a building collapsed and crushed 45 people to death last week in Delhi, or 2,500 years ago in Pericles' Athens, people died in the same way, their family and friends mourned with equal sorrow. So find Chernobyl interesting. It is interesting. Just don't forget about the people who lived and suffered there, you after-the-fact disaster tourist, brushing aside the unimaginable physical pains and unremitting trials these poor people endured without a second thought, perhaps even on the wings of a joke. When you, who tremble at the first pangs of food poisoning and imagine a night vomiting into a toilet as, quote, painful, wouldn't last a second in the face of the real suffering you so easily dismiss and devalue. The suffering born from the modern version of Icarus's folly, flying too close to a subatomic sun, more complex than even the brightest could comprehend so as to control. But that's not it, Ben has learned. Chernobyl didn't happen because of overextended ambition or a lack of scientific knowledge. To speak of control, one must add rods. One must speak of design flaws on those rods of graphite tips accelerating radioactivity upon reentry, the very opposite of the one thing they're called for, deceleration. And the great tragedy of a Soviet system that knew of this potential flaw in their RBMK reactors as early as 10 years prior to April 1986. And yet, better to chance everything, risk it all, even that which did come to pass, rather than admit error and have to work through the painstaking retrofitting process under the eyes of a judgmental, self-righteous West. Plus, There's the significance of doing the test in the wee hours of the morning. Reactor 4 exploded at 1:23.40 a.m. after the reactor had been running at half power for a long time, which apparently is so bad an idea, the test should have been canceled altogether. And why were those wee hours staffed by the plant's B team, kids in their 20s manning posts that should have been under the command of seasoned engineers with more on-the-job experience than the youngsters had on Earth? Power rationing from Kiev had delayed the test, and here, tragically, it was not haste, but institutional procrastination by way of ideological shackles and economic inertia that made all the difference and produced all the fatal waste that followed. Ben now knows more than he could have ever wanted to about the Chernobyl disaster. But Rosaries for Chernobyl was far from the first time the subject was breached with him. His father used Chernobyl as the analogous material for his birds and the bees talk with Ben and his brother Steve. Listen, Ben remembers his dad telling him on some do nothing summer day, either 13 or 14 years old. Ben, why don't you have a seat? You want something to drink, an OJ, some milk? Ben remembers shaking his head. Look, Ben, men and women, boys and girls, you know? Ben says nothing. Okay, son, a nuclear reactor is, you understand fission, right, Ben? Ben says nothing. Atoms split and release energy. This produces a lot of heat. The heat makes steam, which then powers a turbine, creating electricity. It's a beautiful thing, son. Just like the love between a man and a woman. Ben, are you following what I'm saying? Ben remembers his dad looking haggard, and he was haggard, properly worn out and down by this particular fatherly duty. What I'm saying is, don't go splitting atoms with just anyone, okay? You must only make steam and spin turbines with one woman, your wife. I know it's a long way down the road. If I don't tell you this now, you'll be risking a personal Chernobyl. People just go on doing who knows what with control rods, and pretty soon there won't even be an AZ5 option for you. You go and create all these positive Boyd coefficients, and it's too late. At that point, the die has been cast. All the ghosts have been shoved. Then do not poison the core with an unexitable, unquittable xenon pit. You're a good boy. I know you'll always do the right thing. Here, finally, Ben could not. Be a, quote, good boy and, quote, do the right thing made sense. These were tangible goals to aim at. Tangible, just like the Kibbie Dome's east side wall, its color pattern of alternating gray and orange creamsicle squares, looking identical to the arrangement of the steel blocks that sit on top of an RBMK nuclear reactor core. Each time Ben and Pat ride bikes past the Kibbie Dome, Ben hears with perfect clarity the Russian language evacuation order given at nearby Pripyat, no small city with a population of nearly 50,000 people, which became a ghost town at that evacuation announcement. Everything left in place for years to come, frozen in time, with only the natural cycles of changing seasons and the retaking by nature of space previously lost to steel, concrete, and glass causing disturbances with surprising rapidity and just plain surprise. For who would have thought that such a seemingly irredeemably irradiated place could once again support nature and wildlife? Tourism developed soon after it was confirmed that the radiation levels were fairly normal, save for the absolute no-go spots like the corium mass underneath the remains of Reactor 4, the Elephant's Foot, which circa 1987 was a perpetually firing 8,000 plus Röntgen specimen capable of delivering a 50-50 lethal dose of radiation within a few hundred seconds of close proximity. Tourism boomed because deserted Pripyat is an objectively beautiful place, a wild color palette of seafoam blues, auroral purples, and pinks, abounding everywhere amidst rusted hospital cots. They have a handsome golden brown rust, caramelized sugar-colored glass, and the azure swimming pool, with its own rusted beams and fine stained tile, its turquoise diving board and large windows, wall-to-wall wrap-around fenestrae, which lead your eyes out to the orange sunset on the horizon. Even the abandoned gray socialist realism high-rise apartments look good, begging the question, is this what it takes to make socialist architecture visually appealing? The evacuation order, which tragically was not broadcast until more than 30 hours after Reactor 4 blew, the time by which the radiation was so powerful and prevalent. The grainy footage from the evacuation has all these white sparks and crackles and pops all over the tape. They couldn't see it with the naked eye, nor yet feel its devastating effects, but the amount in the city already then a city less than 10 miles from ground zero, was overwhelming. And Ben hears every time he goes past the Kibbie Dome that Russian word for warning, which commenced this evacuation order. Vнимание, vнимание. Vнимание, vнимание. Speaking of vнимание, Ben remembers his grandfather telling him a story about a weightlifting competition that was held years ago at the Kibbie Dome in honor of Lars Michelson. People were warned beforehand that Michelson was going to make an appearance. No one took it seriously. Promotional propaganda, event hype, nothing more. The three dominant theories as to Michelson's whereabouts all these years were A, he had given his life to numbers, in the style of hyper-savant conjecture-proving mathematician Grigory Perelman. B, he had retired to Alessandria, Italy, to a hilltop castle-crowned commune named Cremolino, to write the authoritative history of 21st century Italian politics, focused on the persons of Matteo Salvini, and Giorgio Meloni. Or C, in nothing less than a modern-day imitation of the 5th century Syrian saint Simon Stylites, Lars, having found God, had mounted a pillar somewhere in the desert, and had been spending his time praying, fasting, and making reparation for his and all the world's countless sins. Whatever it was, there was no way he was going to show up now, after all these years, but he did. He did show up, and he participated in the deadlifting portion of the contest, and he pulled 675 pounds at a body weight of 146 pounds, age confirmed, 79 years old. And then he catered the event, making creme brulee right on the 50-yard line, and then he left. He took a big bite of the last creme brulee he ever created, really chomped into and through it, leaving perhaps 23% unfinished dessert next to a cup 16% full of undrunk coffee, his copy, from his coffee shop in Pullman. Lars just unceremoniously put the creme brulee and the coffee cup down, wiped his face with a napkin, threw the napkin into the trash, did not acknowledge the crowd, nor the people on the field with him, didn't say anything, not a single word, turned and left. To turn and leave, Pat's go-to response, but it's all BS. High school kid, anti-localism bravado. Moscow is beautiful. Just see the Fort Russell neighborhood where he lives. The homes, turn-of-the-century bungalows, prairie style, Georgian, Greek revival, even English revival bungalow. Some accented blue, lime green, pink, mini brown roofs paired with white doors. Porticos and porches galore. Lots of space to sit and sip something while watching the street, the sun, the stars. And here's the thing. Maybe what everyone appreciates most about Moscow is the downtown farmers market. Main street stuffed full with vendors, the food, drink, clothing, and farm-to-table fruit and vegetable variety. It's nice walking up and down through the crowds, the auburn foliage and 71 degrees Fahrenheit about you. And this being the last weekend in September, you're going to be watching the Vandals play football in Chernobyl this afternoon. You smile and realize, I am happy. When in Moscow, one is never far from happiness. Such was the contention of Lars Michelson himself, who, when he had just started working at Black Cypress, lived on the top floor of the Moscow hotel apartments, allowing him to survey all the Palouse has to offer. He wrote about this very experience in his autobiography, quote, staring at the twilight summer sky before my eyes, I wish it was already snowing. Pulsating panorama, I surrender. Went to the co-op yesterday, sampled durian, wore a replica 1917 Great War gas mask to stand the smell. The co-op people gave me a hard time about that the most. Tried washing down the taste of the first with Paradise Creek's Cougar Kolsch. Alas, in vain. Relegate thine arrows once more into the cobweb attics of dreamlands far across the fog. Hidden behind untraversable crevices of inaccessible passage, broken dreams, shattered self-delusions, and free-floating dread, end quote. To attempt traversing the inaccessible passages of human limitations, Michelson believed you had to go to the end of Main Street so as to turn right onto 6th Street. What catches one's eye first are these massive grain elevators, white with, quote, Leda County Grain Grows, Inc., written at the top in black. If they look like the perfect place to get a workout in, the very elevated character of the roof buoying a lifter's spirits, moving away from a flat-roofed 12-foot ceiling in a whitewashed church sapping all transcendence towards the darkness and vivid iconography and stunning verticality of the 13th century Gothic church on Krakow's main square, St. Mary's Basilica, which can redeem even the most vapid homily, you're right. It was here that Michelson and friends went hyperbonk piston pump, weights up, down, clanking off the floor, while once in 6 decades blizzard battered the outer walls to the two-tune harmony of 10 below and gusts up to 40, while dumping more than the forecasted 8 inches of snow. Accumulations quickly accelerating past 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4. Continuing past the silos on 6th, you'll soon run into Deacon Street. To turn left on Deacon is to head to the famed Vandal Catholic Center, where a legendary priest long ago turned it, St. Augustine's, into Paris circa AD 1255, the very cutting-edge spear's tip of Catholic intellectual life, then approximately a half-century post-Vatican II. The immediate aftermath of the Second Vatican Council witnessed significant attrition in religious vocations, depressing statistics rinsed and repeated countless times all over the map, with many already consecrated nuns and priests abandoning their vocations midstream. Why? Because maybe the times they were a-changing, because maybe they no longer believed all that, because maybe the church was too boring and irrelevant, because maybe the world was too groovy and hip, because maybe you can't, rather shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and the gone baby made all the priests and nuns gone baby gone. Then the myriad spirit of Vatican II interpretations that plagued the 60s, 70s church in America, like frogs, lice, hail, locusts, and the pestilence. Things like moving the tabernacle to the side and the communion rails out, homilies and sermons seeing no need of gospel wisdom, undergirded by amorphous concepts of love and hope and goodness. All this in the supermarket checkout line with golf, football, and crickets quality pin drop silence jokes sprinkled in throughout. Man doesn't live by bread alone, the master himself said, yet little did they know the fulfillment of the daily bread necessity, the double bread. The holy word of God and his Eucharistic body, blood, soul, and divinity was just as straightforward as it seemed. Salvation sacramentally initiated and strengthened via baptism and confirmation, reconciled together, not thrown to the trash bins of disregard at old age, rather anointed. Supernatural legitimacy in bonds, sacerdotal and sexually unitive procreative matrimony, and back to the beginning, a return to the source and the summit, the Eucharist, all thanksgiving the Eucharist. It really was that simple, and yet what these people got was obfuscation and religiously themed critical race theory, self-hating anti-apologetics, gross misunderstanding of virtues like diversity and tolerance, and in endless doses, the very 15th scrape of the barrel's bottom quality in church music. This was the situation this holy priest at St. Augustine's inherited when first taking over. But he went to work. Boy, did he ever. Oh, buddy. Yeah, buddy, dude. He got after it a little bit. Started shaking things up a little bit. Look, you don't even know. Nah, girl. No way. Nah, girl. Hold up. You mean you're saying he did? Girl, he did what? You're saying he moved the tabernacle back to its throne-centered middle? Put communion rails in and told people to kneel and receive the Corpus Christi on the tongue because lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. And you know it, girl. He made Latin mandatory for all the students and faculty and staff associated with St. Augustine's UI Moscow. Started celebrating the Mass ad Orientem and in Latin. And this was decades before the Third Vatican Council reestablished the TLM as the ordinary form once more. Forget the Kibbie dome. This man, this priest, was proving to be the real Chernobyl on the Palouse. Chernobyl without the disaster, a wellspring of nuclear spiritual energy incapable of ever melting down. He went to Eucharistic adoration one day for his holy hour, following the example set by Saint F. Sheen, the teleeloquent, and asked God for, quote, the $30 million we need for the necessary renovations, Lord. And lo and behold, in the vein of that famous story of Saint Angelica of Irondale, who needed money, asked God, got a call from some super wealthy yacht-owning Catholic oligarch that very day, the guy saying, don't know why, but I just got the feeling I need to send you some money. And she, Saint Angelica, laconically responding, wire it. So too did this priest shortly after his hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament. It called in the main office with, Father, there's someone on the line for you. He said it's urgent. That's a very, very important matter. And the priest was already dancing and skipping and whistling his thanks to God en route from church to office. It was a total church restoration, one based on the cathedrals of pre-Renaissance Europe. Modernists pwned. A huge vertical space where the music and the incense and all the prayers could skyscrape drift float to heaven. 1970s owned. A massive organ and strict interdiction on guitars and emotive moan singing. Postmodern praise and worshipers owned. Idaho interpretations on the rose window at Notre Dame de Paris, Vatican II architects pwned, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth, so much that no one in what had become the most vibrant and theologically orthodox and properly progressive cutting-edge Catholic college in the United States was the least bit surprised when this priest was called to become Archbishop of New York City, then created a cardinal, and then assumed the chair of Peter itself. People were surprised, but tickled to death when years later, another American priest made cardinal became pope. Because not only had these two been friends, close friends, almost brothers, but their names were practically identical, literally identical in the first case, and almost the same in that latter, the nom de famille, beautifully congruent in taking off from the H base through all those German letters, as thick and as warm and as comforting as a foam frothy Hefeweizen during Oktoberfest. Thank you.